9 words, one of the most explosive statements ever made on American soil. It wasn't just a threat. It wasn't just a prediction. It was a wake-up call. Malcolm X didn't say it to incite violence. He said it to stop the violence, the slow, silent violence of oppression. Picture this, April 1964, Cleveland, Ohio, a narrow room packed with black men and women, tension thick enough to slice with a knife. Malcolm stands before the microphone, no teleprompter, no security detail. Just a man armed with truth and a fearless tongue. He knew what he was risking, but he also knew what was at stake. Not just civil rights, not just votes, but the very soul of black America. Malcolm's message wasn't polished for white comfort. It was a clarion call for power, dignity, and urgency. And what he said that night still hits like a hammer in 2025. Because guess what? The ballot still ain't enough, and the bullet, it's still flying through courtrooms, traffic stops, and broken school system. This isn't just history, this is a mirror, and in this series, we're not just replaying Malcolm's words, we're decoding them through the lenses of dark psychology, motivation, and modern injustice. So buckle up, because this isn't just a speech. It's a blueprint for rebellion, a strategy for survival, and a manual for mental liberation. To truly understand the power behind the ballot or the bullet, you have to step back to 1964, a year America was unraveling at the seams. The civil rights movement was in full swing, marches, sit-ins, and protests shaking the South and the nation, but violence lurked beneath every step forward. Police dogs biting children, fire hoses blasting teenagers, bombs destroying black churches. The promise of freedom felt like a cruel joke. Segregation wasn't just legal, it was lethal, and black Americans had little faith in the political system. Voting rights were systematically denied through literacy tests, poll taxes, and sheer terror. The federal government, too slow, too cautious, too afraid to rattle the status quo. Meanwhile, the Cold War was raging, and America wanted to showcase itself as the beacon of freedom, yet it was strangling millions within its own borders. Malcolm X saw this hypocrisy, and he called it out with brutal honesty. His message wasn't just for black America, it was for the world. We're not asking for favors, we want our rights. And if you don't give them to us, we will take them. This wasn't a call for chaos, it was a warning from a man who had lived both sides of the struggle, the prisoner and the prophet. In the next section, we'll dive into how Malcolm's own story shaped this fiery speech, a story of pain, transformation, and relentless purpose. Before Malcolm X was a powerful voice for justice, before the iconic speeches, the sharp suits, the magnetic charisma, he was Malcolm Little. A kid born into a world where hatred was the norm, where his father, a preacher, was killed likely by white supremacists, where his family was torn apart by racism and violence. As a young man, Malcolm drifted into a life of crime, hustling, gambling, petty theft. He was a man lost in the shadows, but prison changed everything. It was behind those bars that Malcolm met the teachings that would transform him. The Nation of Islam introduced him to a new identity, one rooted in black pride, discipline, and self-respect. He read voraciously history, religion, politics. He sharpened his mind as much as his resolve, but Malcolm's transformation wasn't just personal, it was political. He realized the fight for black freedom wasn't about begging for scraps. It was about demanding power. Power to control your own destiny, power to defend your rights. This fiery conviction poured into every word he spoke, every march he led, every speech he gave, and none more powerful than the ballot or the bullet. In the next section, we'll unpack the speech itself line by line, phrase by phrase, to uncover the layers of meaning beneath Malcolm's raw, relentless rhetoric. We want freedom by any means necessary. From the first words of his speech, Malcolm makes one thing clear: this is no time for polite conversation. The time for sugar-coated promises is over. The time for half measures is done. Malcolm X doesn't speak to comfort his listeners, he speaks to shake them awake. He tells his audience that the black community must stop looking to others for permission. The ballot, voting, is a weapon, but it's only effective if you wield it with strength and intention. Malcolm warns that if the political system continues to ignore, oppress, or betray black Americans, then they must be prepared to defend their rights by any means necessary, including violence if required. This wasn't a reckless call to arms, it was a cold, calculated warning born from decades of watching broken promises pile up like corpses. The speech cuts through euphemisms and polite platitudes like a razor blade. Malcolm's words are a mirror reflecting back the raw, unvarnished truth of America's racial reality, and for his listeners it was both a challenge and a call to action. Either you take your power through the ballot, or you prepare for the bullet. In the next section, we'll dive deeper into the meaning of "by any means necessary," the phrase that became Malcolm's rallying cry, by any means necessary, 4 simple words that carry a thunderous weight. But what does it really mean to Malcolm X? It was a refusal to accept half measures or empty promises. It was a declaration that justice will not be politely requested, it will be demanded, violent. It was not his first choice. He respected peace as a tactic, not a rule. To him, the goal was freedom, dignity, and equality, and whatever tools it took to get there were justified. It was a strategic mindset born of necessity. When doors are locked and voices silenced, sometimes the window needs to be broken. This phrase electrified his audience because it spoke to the reality of systemic violence they faced every day. It was a promise that their fight would not be passive, that their will would not be broken, that their rights would not be negotiated away. It was the heartbeat of a revolution, a reminder that survival is the first and last rule of success. In the next section, we'll explore the powerful symbolism of the ballot, why Malcolm saw voting not just as a right, but as a weapon. When Malcolm spoke of the ballot, he wasn't talking about a casual checkbox or a hopeful wish. He called voting a weapon, a tool for reclaiming power. But here's the catch: a weapon only works if you know how to use it. For decades, black Americans were denied that weapon through violence, intimidation, and legal tricks. Malcolm urged his people to understand the system, to study it, master it, and use it to their advantage. But more than that, he warned against putting blind faith in politicians or political parties. Don't put your trust in any party, he said, because true power lies not in loyalty to parties, but in loyalty to your own people. Voting is a step, but it's only one step on a much longer path. The goal: to make the system fear the vote of black Americans, to make elected officials accountable not just to promises, but to consequences. This mindset turns democracy into a battlefield where every vote is a shot fired in the fight for justice. Next, we'll examine Malcolm's philosophy of black nationalism, a radical vision of power that challenged the very foundations of America. Malcolm X's black nationalism wasn't just a political stance, it was a declaration of independence. It said loud and clear, we don't need permission to exist, to thrive, or to demand respect. This philosophy rejected the idea of asking for scraps from a system designed to keep black people powerless. Instead, it embraced self-determination, economic empowerment, and community control. For Malcolm, black nationalism was about creating spaces where black people could build their own schools, own their own businesses, and govern their own lives. It was a refusal to be dependent on the very system that oppressed them. This was a radical shift in mindset from waiting for permission to demanding power. and it made many uncomfortable because it exposed the truth that equality would never come through polite requests or quiet patience. One of the most powerful parts of the Ballot or the Bullet speech is Malcolm X's plea for unity beyond religion, beyond sects. He said, "We're not here to argue over religion, we're here to fight for our freedom." This wasn't just about the nation of Islam or Christianity, it was about black people coming together as one. Malcolm understood that division is the enemy's oldest trick to keep the oppressed fighting among themselves while the oppressor remains in control. He called for a collective identity that transcended differences, an identity rooted in shared struggle and shared destiny. This unity was more than symbolic, it was strategic, because real power is built on solidarity, on communities that stand together, unbreakable and unwavering. And Malcolm's vision was clear. Only through unified action could black Americans hope to seize the power they deserved. In the next section, we'll peel back the layers of Malcolm's sharp critique of power, the enemies in suits who kept the system rigged. Malcolm X didn't just speak about the visible chains of racism. He peeled back the layers to expose the hidden architects, the politicians, businessmen, and power brokers who thrived on division and inequality. He called them the enemies in suits. These were not the hooded racists on street corners, but the polite predators in boardrooms and government offices. Malcolm understood the dark psychology behind power, how the elite manipulate fear, distrust, and complacency to keep their grip tight. He warned his listeners, don't be fooled by their smiles or their speeches. Their agenda is control. Their weapon is deception. This was a call for vigilance to see the system not just as broken, but as designed to keep black people oppressed. Malcolm's insight here is crucial for success in any fight. Know your enemy, understand their tactics, and be prepared to counteract with strategy and unity. In our final section, we'll explore Malcolm's lasting legacy and why the Ballot or the Bullet still echoes in the fight for justice today. Decades have passed since Malcolm X stood on that stage in 1964, but his words in the Ballot or the Bullet still burn bright, a beacon for those fighting injustice today. His speech was more than a moment in history, it was a blueprint for empowerment, resilience, and radical change. Malcolm's call to take power by any means necessary inspires movements around the world, reminding us that freedom is never given, it is claimed. The ballot remains a weapon, a tool for justice, but when it fails, the spirit of the bullet, the fight, the resistance lives on in every courageous act against oppression. Malcolm taught us that the path to freedom is neither easy nor safe. It demands clarity, courage, and uncompromising determination. And above all, it demands that we never stop fighting for the dignity, equality, and human rights that every person deserves. So today, remember Malcolm X not just as a man of his time, but as a timeless voice of revolution, strategy, and hope. The ballot or the bullet, the choice is ours to make. What will you choose? The fight continues. The legacy endures, and the future waits for no one. Malcolm X's The Ballot or the Bullet remains a powerful and urgent call to action, reminding us that true freedom demands both strategic engagement and unwavering resolve. His message challenges us to wield the ballot as a weapon for justice while staying prepared to fiercely defend our rights when democracy falls short. More than a historic speech, it is a timeless blueprint for empowerment, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of equality that continues to inspire movements for change around the world today.